Yo, you hear that? That's the sound of me back in my own house, in my own room, and with a computer that doesn't make me think that doesn't make me think that a freaking fan is on every 2 seconds. All right, that computer was whirring to all hell. I also have a version of Premiere that is actually usable, not a version from like 2012, so that's always a plus. But we're back in the good setup today. We got back chilling, and what do you know? 287 has officially dropped, and we kick off the chapter with a beautiful spread of my girl, Nana Shimura, who is just continuing to rise up on top girls list for me personally. That spread is a good one right there, all right? That is a thick woman. There wasn't really much substance to that phrase, but I am a dude, so I didn't think straight there for a second. Anyway, Deku meets her, right? Deku meets her inside the quirk of One for All. Nana says, to think we'd be meeting after my passing, all for one. So the interesting thing here is that from what Nana says, we're inside One for All. Because Deku asks what is happening, he recognizes Nana Shimura. So Deku is with Nana, and then across on the other side is Shigaraki, but with like All for One like coming out of his left arm or some shit. You know how like in Venom, in the movie Venom, when like the Venom symbiote like comes out of him and is like talking to him and shit? That's what this looks like. It looks like he's just being like manifested from Shigaraki's body, but he can talk and he can do shit. But the interesting thing here is that Nana says they're inside the quirk of One for All, but then you have Shigaraki struggling with taking control of the quirk of All for One. And it's revealed later in the chapter that this entire, them being inside the quirk is the power struggle over whether or not Shigaraki can steal the quirk away or not. So we then move on to All for One doing his normal shit, where he's just saying, he's talking trash, saying that Nana's a corpse and that she shouldn't be talking. He says, look, Tamura, it's your grandmother. And this is an interesting thing here, because All for One then speaks on a humongous speech that is very interesting to me, and it is a lengthy amount of speech bubbles, so bear with me here. But he says, there were accounts of patients who underwent organ transplants having their personalities adopt one similar to their donors. Most dismissed it as some occult superstition. I'm sorry if I butchered that word, but I've experienced the same phenomenon myself. I would sometimes have riveting dreams featuring the holders of the various quirks I had seized. Whenever it happened, I was disheartened, left with a similar feeling of guilt as them. Interestingly, however, the moment I relinquished said quirk, the ghost of the original holder would never, come out to haunt again. So All for One basically says that, interestingly enough, how Deku can like communicate with the quirk of One for All, and how All for One can communicate with the quirk he is the quirk, can communicate with Shigaraki. It seems that people who have organ transplants adopt personalities, which this is a bit far, but we are in a different universe here, so it seems to explain. But apparently, much like quirks, they're certain cells hold the memories and personality of those who they were from, and apparently the same thing happens, how a person's consciousness can manifest itself within their own quirk. So that explains the fact that Shigaraki is now getting All for One's consciousness manifested within the quirk. However, what isn't really made clear to me, maybe it is made clear, if you know, by all means tell me, but whether or not like the All for One communicating with Shigaraki is like actually All for One just talking to him from prison, or just like a manifestation of his consciousness. So like it's not the real All for One, but like somehow it is. I don't know how to say it, but hopefully you get what I mean. But the cool thing is Shigaraki then recognizes Nana Shimura, and he asks, why are you here? And he recognizes her, and he sees her in the photo, grandmother. He then sees, he remembers her being the hands that pushed him forward. And All for One proceeds to trash talk his younger brother. He says, "And now I've cursed my own younger brother to have his consciousness bound to his own quirk. I can only imagine how it would feel to be the next holder of One for All, cursed to have their own personalities live in this blighted plane of existence for eternity." Meanwhile, Nana Shimura says, "You are Kotaro's." And then Shigaraki looks up and says, "Whatever the reason, don't worry, grandmother. I blame you too." And we see Nana with an extremely serious face here. So obviously we knew that Nana Shimura's presence wasn't going to, redeem Shigaraki in any way. Shigaraki's unredeemable at this point, but the fact that he recognizes who she is interesting. He doesn't quite know that she's tied to the quirk yet, I believe, but now Nana also realizes that her grandson is slowly becoming the greatest villain Japan's ever known. You know what I mean? It's kind of interesting. We then get a huge storm, and Deku says One for All is being eroded. This is pretty much the metaphorical sense of Shigaraki trying to steal the quirk away. One for All, or All for One, has given him, a lot of encouragement. He says One for All's policy of moving is in accordance to the wielder's willpower. It's responding to your unquenchable rage. If you hear roommates in the background, I apologize. They might be a bit loud, but they shouldn't be picked up on my mic, but they might be. Anyway, All for One proceeds to, he's Shigaraki's hype man, He's being like, he's giving him the Darth Sidious treatment, where he's giving him the, oh, that's good. However, it doesn't seem to be enough, as Shigaraki can't fully steal away the quirk, as we then hear someone say, "Halt." And look at this, boys. Look at this. In comes the first user of One for All for One's, I think it was younger brother, maybe it's older brother, but he comes in and says, "Considering my brother can be just as stubborn as me at times, manipulating this kid," he says, manipulating this kid at this time, brother. He questions, and he comes right beside Nana Shimura, and helps Nana, try to fight back the stealing of One for All. Of course, All for One recognizes his brother, and he gives him the shit talk. And his brother says, "We won't be going to you. We have chosen to remain within this boy," as Deku's just sitting there chilling. And then Shigaraki realizes that he's getting pushed back. He couldn't, he can't absorb the power. And then All for One gets pissed, because he says, "Power, Tamura. If your strength is combined with mine, then I can take it." He's like, "Then we can all, kill everybody, do everything, blah, 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 blah. I've been watching through Tamura. He doesn't know how to make use of such an excellent power. He couldn't even protect his friends or his teachers, instead needed protection himself. If that wasn't enough, he let himself be consumed by his rage." He says, "Leaving this power to such a simpleton was your mistake." So All for One's pissed, right? And he said he's been watching through Tamura. So if I'm putting the puzzle pieces together here, it sounds like All for One's consciousness can manifest itself within the quirk, and that he can almost watch through Tamura's eyes while in prison, is what I'm assuming he meant by that. So I don't know if that's true or not. We'll see. We then get a very big spread of the first user saying that he's not a mistake, and we get a big long speech about how he says Deku, he's a boy possessed by the needs to save others. Despite his common sense, this power will stick with this boy, and Deku is now given the chance to move as he rushes at Shigaraki, and there's a big burst of light as we're snapped back into the present moment, and both Deku and Shigaraki fly away from each other, and Deku says, "I didn't lose my power, but Tamura, your body and quirk were not completely stabilized. You were unable to put all your strength into taking this quirk." So All for One's talking to him through. He says, "You won't lose your mind. You just need to perfect your body. Now take a step back and replenish your energy." And then Deku says, "Shigaraki, please don't move anymore." And that's the end of the fight that we get for this chapter. The next few pages I'll talk about in a second, as it flashes to a new scene. But this whole exchange right here, in my opinion, shows that this fight may be over, because Shigaraki got his ass beat. He's not willing to fully give himself over to All for One, and Deku's down for the count. So it looks like both players need to go and replenish their energy Tomura needs to learn how to use his quirk. Now, whether or not that'll, how that'll affect the next arcs, I don't know. I fully expected Shigaraki to win this fight, and the villains would win this arc moving forward, but we don't have to worry because the League of Villains and Gigantomachia are still on their way to this fight. So Shigaraki being out, even if he is actually out, he may not actually be out yet, but we don't know. Shigaraki hypothetically being out doesn't mean the end for the villains, because Machia is his own beast in himself. So we flash forward to the League of Villains riding on Machia's back as Dabi says, "Get ready." He says, "We're about to liberate this good-for-nothing hero society." So Dabi just, Dabi's being Dabi, all right? Dabi just says some shit, and no one cares what he says, all right? Dabi's dialogue, Dabi just talks to people, and, like, no one gives a shit what he says. Like, it's the same shit every time. He's like he's the monologuing supervillain that he's not actually a supervillain. It's like, really, dude? Like, we're talking about liberating society again? Like, what is this, the 6th time today? Like, does Dabi have any other hobbies besides liberating the hero society? Like, come on, brother. In my opinion, we get a really, really good interaction here with Compress and Toga, as Compress says, he asks if Toga's all right, and he knows that she wants to look for the UA students. And then Toga says, at what point do they draw the line? And we see Compress doesn't quite know what to say there, and she says, if a hero's duty is to save people, was Jin-kun not a person in their eyes? Now, forgive me here, but I believe Jin was twice, correct? Yes, Jin was twice. So she says, if a hero's duty to save people, was Jin-kun not a person in their eyes? Will they kill me as well? And then she says, I'd like to ask that question to them, to Deku, and to Ochako, depending on their answer. And then she says, yeah, I'm all right. And we flash forward to Ochako's face. But the interesting thing here is that it brings up an interesting question. Because hypothetically, I don't think Deku would be someone who would take someone's life. However, it's very clear that Shigaraki is going to need to be killed if he's going to be defeated. I doubt Deku's going to put him down and put him in prison for the rest of his life. I doubt that's going to work, but that's long in the future of My Hero. Hawks was not afraid to just straight up slice twice, just straight up just kill him. Hawks just literally killed twice. So it's very clear that Hawks is willing to do whatever it takes for the greater good of humanity, even if he's doing some questionable morality stuff. So the interesting thing here is now that'll bring up the question of whether or not Deku or Ochako believe in taking a villain's life. But that'll be the end of the chapter. This chapter was titled Mistake. Next chapter, I don't quite know where we're going to go from here. Will Machia make it to the fight in time? Will we even get to see the aftermath of Deku and Shiki's fight? Because Endeavor is technically still there. He might be badly fatigued, but Endeavor is still there. Todoroki is still there. And Bakugo is still chilling, half dead at this point. It'd be interesting to see where the story what direction the story takes from here going in, because there's so many things that are happening that a twist or a turn could easily come in and just bring in a whole new perspective for this arc as a whole. I guess that didn't make any sense, but hopefully you get what I mean.